sending a raven, blackbird in the sky, sending a signal that I'm here, some sign of life. I'm sending a message of feathers and bone. Just let me know I'm not forgotten out here alone. I'm so far from home, so far from home. Not where I belong, not where I belong. I'm so far from home, so far from home. I'm sending a raven with blood on its wings, hoping it reaches you in time, and you know what it means. 'Cause out here in the darkness and out of the light, if it gets to me too late, just know that I tried. I'm so far from home, so far from home. Not where I belong, not where I belong. I'm so far from home, so far from home.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Far From Normal Radio Show. I am your host, Jay Moss, and as always, my brother from another mother, Mr. Bud Vino. Bud, how are you doing this evening?
Yo, and yo, my brother from another mother, Jay Money Moss, February 12th, 2019. We've got Neil Shelton, fashionably late, but you know who isn't late? Who's right on time? What's his name, Mr. Rev it up, Mr. Randy Davis. How's it going, brother?
Never been better, man. Glad to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're tackling parental alienation and the subject of head on tonight, brother, with some fantastic guests.
We are, and once again, we have a little bit of technical difficulties going on because Facebook is trying to censor what we're doing. But hey, look, we go live to YouTube. Have fun with that one, folks. So you try and shut us down somewhere, we just go somewhere else and we make it happen, folks.
Yeah, we just keep coming back. We're like herpes. We're not like us, but we're coming back, baby.
Oh, awesome. Oh, I don't know about that analogy, but that's okay.
Yeah, that might be. It's not really the best, but it is a humorous one. On their toes right away.
Absolutely. And we are more than ecstatic and more than excited tonight. I know that we've got two guys on in the first part of our show here, and I'm going to have them turn on their cameras right now and their microphones. But it looks like we've got Andrew Preston.
Hello.
And we've also got Stephen Best out there. And these guys are from Britizen, Kane, the amazing group out there who put out I can't even say enough about this song. We're just going to play it tonight so people can see for themselves what parental alienation does to people. And Andrew, thank you. Stephen, thank you so much for coming on tonight. We greatly appreciate it. And I'm sure my co-host would love to thank you as well.
Thank you for having us.
Guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you, guys. And for the folks out there that don't know Jay, it's about almost 1:30 a.m. out there where these boys are. So
It is. I've got work in the morning. It's getting late. No, it's all good. It's all good.
Yes, and I think it's such an important topic for you that you guys are staying up to the wee hours of the morning out there in the UK. So across the pond over there, as we say, and you guys, I think it's very important for our listeners to hear and to understand that parental alienation and some of the things that we tackle in the family court system, the CPS issues, all of those things are still happening across the pond, so to speak, as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. I work with a lot of people in the UK and the US, and there's not a lot of difference. The system is completely screwed up, both here and across there.
Yeah, it really is. And, we've got so many issues going across right now, especially here in the States with parental alienation, and you have them as well. So when we get into this and we dive into this, understand this is not just a U.S. problem, people. This is a problem that is happening in every country in the world. And really, it came across, from my understanding, in the 1970s out of some of the Hispanic towns out there in, I believe it was even Argentina, that came across with some of these things. And there was actually a doctor that thought that this was the best interest of the child. And so what they ended up doing was they spread this throughout court systems all over the entire world, and they adopt the same policies all over the world. So when we're talking about these things, I know, Stephen, you have experienced this. And what is it like for you going through this? You've been through this system for quite a few years now. Yep. And what was it like for you? What is it like for you going through parental alienation?
Well, I don't want to say my situation is worse than anyone else's out there, because everyone's individual. Everyone who's going through this will feel like their situation is the worst situation in the world. But I actually lost my eyesight and became blind back in 2016. After that happened, myself and my ex began arguing all the time. Eventually, it coincided with her moving almost 600 miles with both the children. The family court did absolutely nothing to help. And it's the worst pain any parent can possibly feel. It's the equivalent, and I don't mean to sound melodramatic when I say this, but it is literally the equivalent of losing a child to death that you know is actually still alive. It is the worst feeling any parent can ever feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it actually is. I mean, being estranged from your own children, when, that's really, for a parent, that's your life. And so basically what you're basically telling people is that once they go through the family court system and they basically lose custody or they become a non-custodial parent, basically now you are a visitor in your own kids' lives.
To become a non-custodial parent, to become a non-resident parent, as we say over here, it relegates you to a second-class citizen in your child's life. You become irrelevant in decisions around medical issues. You become irrelevant in decisions around education. You literally become irrelevant. In fact, it gets to the point where when the children's mother or father, because it doesn't just happen to men, it happens to women as well, when that resident parent meets another person who has maybe only known your children, as in my case, for around a year, just over a year, that person actually is considered by the authorities, the family court, social services, all of the authorities, that person is actually considered more relevant than myself as the biological parent. And it's a crazy system. It should never have been allowed to get to where it's actually gotten to.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And how is it that you came across meeting Andrew and putting Dear Sophia, which we'll talk about a little bit here, how did you come into play by meeting Andrew and getting the song together?
Well, back when this first happened to me, back a couple of years ago, I started a Facebook page literally only because I felt I had to do something. I didn't know what to do. I was just going through it, and I started meeting people online that were also going through it. And I started coming across this phrase, parental alienation. And I thought to myself, what the hell's parental alienation? I've never heard of it. So I started researching it. And when my background's in psychology, I've studied psychology on and off for over 10 years. I've studied psychotherapy. So I started this Facebook page that I called Child Absent with a friend of mine. And because of that, I met another person, a gentleman called Ray Groundland. And Ray is also an alienated father. And he hosts a charity event in his backyard every year. And he has sort of musicians play and they give the money to charity. And Ray knew Andrew and Danny, who did a fantastic job putting the song together. And me and Ray had a discussion one afternoon. We had a discussion and we thought, wouldn't it be fantastic if we could find a medium that might actually introduce parental alienation to people who have never heard of it? And Ray came up with the idea of music. And that's basically how I ended up being introduced to Andrew and to Danny.
Awesome. So Andrew, when you're meeting and you're going to this party and you're hearing about parental alienation maybe for the first time, what was it like for you thinking out there, man, there's these thousands and thousands of children that are going through this right now who are being alienated from their parents? Why is that? And how did that make you feel? What made you want to take on that type of project?
I mean, when I first met, because when we did the charity event, that was the first time I met Ray as well. And a few days later, he called me up and asked me about doing this, whether I'd want to make a track about this. And at that point, I hadn't heard, much like Steve said, I hadn't heard the phrase parental alienation. I knew when he was describing, I knew that sort of thing happened, but I didn't know, one, to the extent that it happened, and two, that it actually had a name like parental alienation that was given to it. So obviously, Ray sort of told me about this is what he was thought about doing, what my thoughts were on it. I sort of went away, did research, read up on the issues, read up on as much information as I possibly could about it. And I started to realize how fast and how widespread it was. Not just from like people that Ray was introducing me to, like Steve, but since then I've also found a lot of even my own friends and family that are going through the same situation, or their partners are going through the same situation. So it became really clear to me then how far spread this issue is. And I think, like I say, Ray gave me his sort of facts of his own personal story. Steve gave me his facts for his personal story. And I just went away and wrote the song, not based on their specific situations, but mainly the emotional tells, that they said from the father's side, from the parent side, the alienated parent side in that situation. And then obviously with the child responding, because the child doesn't know that they're being in that situation. The child doesn't know that their mind's been poisoned. The child doesn't know that this is going on. So I had to write from the perspective that the child was perfectly thought all this was normal, and the actual parent who was being alienated is the bad person. I had to, make sure that was portrayed well in the song as well.
Yeah, and I think it was portrayed 100% correct, because I think a lot of the children going through this really don't have an idea, and they feel as if the other parent, maybe Bud can chime in on this one, because I know the child doesn't understand. They're only getting the perspective from one parent. They're not getting both sides of the equation here. And Bud, my question on a lot of this is to these guys is, writing from that perspective, was there some insight maybe from a child, or maybe you just put yourself in the mind's eye of the child?
Yeah, it was very much just a case of putting myself in the position of the child. Like I wrote the first verse, which is from the father's perspective when he's sort of writing to his daughter Sophie, sort of trying to explain the situation to her, trying to make her understand what's going on. And then when I came to writing the child's verse, I looked at what I'd said from the father's perspective and thought, well, how would a child who doesn't know that this is happening, how would they rebuttal that if they were going to actually physically write a response letter, which is what I wanted it to come across like? How would they rebuttal the things that are being told to them by their parent, basically, that they believe is a nasty person, that they believe is, spiteful, not a person to be around. So yeah, the child one was very much a case of putting myself in their shoes, because I had no real guidance as far as that was concerned.
Yeah. I'm going to turn the floor over also to my co-hosts here. I'm sure they have some additional questions for you. Bud, go ahead.
If I could. How you reading me, brother?
Great.
Good. The first thing is, I say it's funny, and I don't mean in a ha-ha way. I mean in a way that might bring some people some comfort. It's funny when I heard the story. A lot of us out there, this is how Parents United Worldwide started too, Jay, the same way as feeling rudderless, feeling like you're alone and not having an outlet, not knowing what to do, so deciding to take to social media. And then as you get into it, as our guests have pointed out too, you get into it, you realize that you're not alone in this. And I think it's one of those situations where you're in the beginning almost embarrassed. You think it's a sort of a foreign thing. You hear parental alienation. What is that? Then you realize how prevalent it actually is. And the other thing too, our guest said, which is another thing, is that he didn't want to be melodramatic or overly dramatic in saying that it's like akin to losing a child to death. That people going through this, I know, will not think that's overblown at all. That's a painfully wonderful analogy in a horrible way. It's a great way to put it, because that's the feeling. It's a helpless feeling, especially again when your child's still out there, when you want to protect your child from pain. That's an innate thing, love and protection. And when you can't do that, and you're not afforded that God-given right, it can drive anyone insane. And we've said it too, Jay, the biggest and the baddest, and I see it, even saw it today, the biggest and the bad, doesn't matter who you are, it'll drop you to your knees. So these sort of things, this is how I know we're going to quote unquote win this fight too, Jay. We see people, Britizen, Kane coming forward, these guys coming forward, using that pain in their experiences for good, to try and put things out there to help other people. And there's other people that do other sorts of art and others. It's all coming together. And this is how you win those fights, to bring awareness to it and some light to it and some strength and power to it, and say, you know what, we're no longer victims. We're going to do something to tackle this proactively. We're going to bring it to light. And I think that it's wonderful that you guys are doing that. Hats off to you guys. It's very much needed.
Can I jump in on something?
Sure.
What you just said?
I love it.
Don't mind. What I think as well is when you've been through this, it is the most painful thing. Someone could literally take a chainsaw and cut off your legs, and it would not hurt as much as this. So when you are fighting this, it's like there's nothing more anyone can do to hurt you. So you might as well put everything you have into what you're doing to try and solve this problem.
Absolutely, 100%. I'm going to go ahead and go ahead.
Real quick, and then we'll go to next. Again, you couldn't be more right. I've said it before. When you go to that level of pain, you want to be careful with people that that level of pain, because as our guest says, you come back literally fearless, because you've been through the work. You don't care anymore. So you might as well spin that pain into something. Might as well get something out of it. Don't go through all of it for nothing. Spin it into something. You've already been kicked, stabbed, shot, pissed on, spit on. Might as well get up and start doing the pissing.
Yep, that's exactly right. I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to Mr. Randy Davis here for an additional question as well.
Yeah. Hey, guys. First of all, Steve, my heart goes out to you. And I know some of what you may be going through. My brother recently had a stroke, and it affected the left side of vision in both eyes. So to be blind, you've got another issue to deal with there that's all together. I mean, my brothers went through all kinds of things, so my heart feels for you there. I guess my thing for you guys, I'm very proud of what you're doing. And as Jay would tell you, in the entry that you watched, there's one guy that's in there, his name's Dominic Tomasella. And that's just one of the friends that we lost. Your video really touched me. And seeing a gun to the man's head, it really touched me, because to us, that's reality, because we have actually seen it. Now, there's a lot of people out there, and I'm just going to tell you, until I was involved in family court, I had no idea, and you could not have convinced me. You could not have convinced me that this could even happen in America. Now, what's even more shocking is the exact same thing is going on where you are. So knowing that it's a global issue, and they use the same terminology, they use the same social work skill sets, they use the same techniques in school. You go to the schools to alienate you from the education, to alienate you from the medical and mental health care, extracurricular activities. So I guess my question to both of you is, why do you think this is happening? Is there a bigger force, or what force do you think is behind this? Because it's obviously some kind of a coordinated force in my mind that's making this happen on a global scale.
There's in the UK, there's an awful lot of money involved in the family court system. It's a multi-billion-pound industry, and let's be honest, if you go to court and they do exactly what they're supposed to do, and both parents get 50-50 or close to 50-50 care, you don't go back to court. Therefore, you don't pay another lawyer, you don't pay the judge more money, you don't pay the other authorities around the family court more money, and they lose billions and billions of pounds. But because they do what they do, and they prevent contact, and they'll say you need to see your children in a contact centre, and you need to have this social worker, and you need to do this parenting course, or whatever it happens to be, it's just more and more and more money pumped into the system. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I believe you're 100% right. That's the same thing that happens in the United States, is that the money causes the perpetual litigation. And it's a never-ending circle in which you'll never, ever get out of until these kids turn of age, which is 18 here in the States, probably. I don't know if it's 18 there in the UK or not, but I'm pretty sure it's got to be close to that age.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, no, and my question here to Andrew is, what type of kickback are you getting in the UK for putting out a song like this? Do you have some of these? I mean, if I was to produce a song and put one together and put one out, obviously you're going to have CPS calling me, giving me death threats and everything else. Are you receiving anything like that, or are you getting any kickback in a positive or negative way?
No, not in a negative way yet. I mean, I imagine it's coming. I imagine there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with, as it starts to grow more and more and spread further. I imagine there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with what we're saying and what we're trying to spread, because a lot of people will be in denial that this is even a thing. Like we've said, like it's not a term that gets spoken about a lot. A lot of people are going to, brush it under the carpet, deny that this is even happening on such a large scale. But so far, which is good, all the feedback has been positive. Everything that's come from it has been positive. We've seen a lot of positive support, not just from people who were going through it, but more importantly, people who didn't know about it. And that was the key thing, I think, for us, was to get people who didn't know about it aware of the situation. Right. And obviously, like we said previously, we've got a petition on the go over here, which can be signed by people in the UK. I think it can only be signed by people within the UK, unfortunately, but we've got the petition on the go. And obviously the whole point of this was to get people aware of the issue, but more importantly, to start doing something about it. And obviously the first step, or one of the first steps on that, is to get names on the petition so it can be taken to Parliament over here and discussed.
Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree. What we're going to do now is we're going to play the song for you real quick, and then we'll come back with some more questions here. So guys, if you want to turn your cameras off real quick again, I will go ahead and play this amazing song for you guys.
Reading these letters and not been 10 years since I last seen you, that's a decade we lost. I put my pen to this paper a lot, just trying to find a way to circumnavigate the hatred you got, and for what? How could the love I have for you ever falter when it was born out of the love I gave your mother at the altar? You're my daughter, and though I hate the way she's making this play out, I could never blame you for me breaking down. Lord, take me now. I keep replaying back when you were 5, when you would find comfort in me sleeping in your room at night when you were frightened. Fast forward now now it's thoughts of suicide, cause either she intercepting your post or you believe her stupid lies. And Nana Pauline's been asking after you, saying that we have to talk, but how when I can't convince you to answer calls? I never hated you, not for a second, don't believe that at all. Last resort, back and forth, now we back in family go.
When you left, you just departed without a trace. Now you're gonna leave me all alone. I can't even reach you on the phone. All your motives hard to find, the darkened voices amplified. Now I'm sitting in this room alone. I keep trying to reach you on the phone.
Dear diary, that deadbeat who calls himself a father just sent another letter for contact, like he's expecting I'd want that, like he expects a response back, like he thinks I need him, throwing the word love around like I'm just meant to believe it, mentioning suicide like I'm meant to heed it. How though, and he never gave a damn about us, just left us out cold. Her mom told me how he grabbed her around the hair and dragged her down the stairs and threw her out the house. So why on earth do you think I'd want to see him for? He playing back when I was 5, when I would find him by my side, fist clenched, had me scrambling to try and find something to hide behind. I swear to God he's dead to me for every second I'm alive. Now once again you wanna drag me to court and tell the whole room I've been brainwashed and my actions are forced, but nah, Mom's right, he has never given love. I never needed him and never will, and I'll tell that to the judge.
When you left, you just departed without a trace. Now you're gonna leave me all alone. I can't even reach you on the phone. All your motives hard to find, the darkened voices amplified. Now I'm sitting in this room alone. I keep trying to reach you on the phone.
I send apologies to the person who finds it's been alienated so long, maybe leaving Earth's the right thing. Judge dismiss the case, Sophie looked me dead in the eyes, a puppet on a string controlled by the woman who fed her lies. I mean, I fought depression here for 10 years, stress and tears, all for what? The judge to dismiss it before he gets to hear my side of events? Sophie, you just have to know this isn't your fault and it isn't how this was planned to go. I love you here and now, just how I love you in the grave. I pray one day your mother changes all her unscrupulous ways, at least enough to scrub away all of this good for nothing taint she's left on me, but for me nothing can cover up the pain. And so that's why I've landed on the darkest escape, no longer harbor the pain. I may never feel like a father again. Hope next time we meet those feelings have left you still to my temple. I forgive you, but believe I won't forget you. I'm sorry.
Parental alienation is a serious mental health abuse issue which is affecting millions of children and parents around the world today. In 2016, in the UK alone, there were 30,000 applications submitted to the courts for contact, with 45,000 individual children named within those applications. Because these cases can take many years to resolve, there were over 80,000 children named in contact orders in that very same year. Parents and children who are exposed to this type of alienating behaviour may suffer both psychological and emotional damage. Unfortunately, this type of domestic abuse is leading to a meteoric rise in depression, which in turn is leading to an alarming increase in the number of suicides. For more information, for help, or to find out how you can help, please visit www.dear-sophie.com. Although Sophie isn't real, parental alienation is.
And we're going to come back here on camera. That was just an amazing, amazing show there when we come down to parental alienation. Andrew, amazing, amazing song, amazing video that goes along with it. My congratulations on that. Amazing work there.
Very proud.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that it's very important that we're going to go ahead and we're going to get out there. If you guys are out there and you're going to be watching, probably we're going to have a lot more people watching later on, obviously, because we're going to have to copy this and put it back to Facebook. We will. But obviously, www.dear-sophie.com
is the website, yes.
And I've already taken a look at it. You've got some amazing stuff out there, great information for people so that they can learn about alienation if they don't know what it is.
Yep.
What we'd like to do with the website, what we want to do with the website is, because the song will speak to people who are affected by parental alienation, but it will also speak to people who have never heard of parental alienation, just because it's a bloody good song as well. What we'd like to do is encourage people who hear the song to then come through the website and learn what this is and how big a problem this is.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, that was amazing. And I think that we've got some amazing stuff when it comes down to bringing this out and bringing it forward that we've done just in the last few years. Because before we even mentioned songs like this coming out, we had issues to where the psychological associations were not backing, or the courts were not backing up. They would say, well, parental alienation is a junk science. That was the key words for the court, calling it a junk science. What, Steve, what do you think about it being called a junk science?
It's complete. Well, first thing I'll say is, from someone who is living it, if it's junk science, then I must have a serious mental illness then, because I'm living this junk science, and believe me, it feels pretty damn real. But what I would also say on a more professional level is, I've studied this now almost every day for the last 2 years, and there is so much information out there. Professionals like Richard Warshak, Amy Baker, Steve Miller, Linda Gottlieb, and I could list loads more, who have done study after study proving. And to be honest with you, the only people who are interested now in calling this a junk science, there are some hardline feminists out there who still call it junk science. The only other people who call it junk science are people who want to sell books and just want to have an argument with people. They didn't have to pick parental alienation. They could have picked schizophrenia, or they could have picked ADHD. I mean, I could write a book now and say ADHD is a junk science. It's just children misbehaving. But you know what? There is so much scientific evidence out there to prove that I'd be talking complete nonsense, that even if I did write that book, though, one thing I'm guaranteed to do is make some money. And I would make money out of it. And that's what these people are doing. They're only calling it a junk science to make money, or to further their own agenda. Or
maybe to protect the money. To protect the money that's involved.
Like I said earlier, the family court in the UK is a multi-billion-pound industry, and I'm sure the family court in the US is probably tens of millions.
It's the last we heard when a documentary called Divorce Corp came out, which, by the way, we have interviewed. Bud and I interviewed our good buddy there who produced Divorce Corp. And he says at the time when it came out that the family court industry was a $50 billion a year industry. $50 billion. And it was just a shocking number that we have that comes across. Not only, I don't know how it is in the UK, but my question for you also would be, let's say, for instance, if you're alienated from your child and you've got child support issues, you could be talking about going to jail for being behind on child support. That happens here.
We don't go to jail. Over here, they can now remove our passport. But what they do over here is they'll increase the arrears. And what they will do is, when you eventually meet someone else and maybe have another family with someone else, they do not take that into account. They will only take into account the fact that you are this child's mother, or you are this child's father. You must pay 20-30% of your wage every month to this person, even though that person is now remarried, not allowing you to see your child, and bringing in two wages, probably living a better life than you're living. You also now have another child with another family, and your new child is suffering because they just want the money. It's what it's all about is just how much money they can take and pump into this industry.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. Bud, you're out there. Do we have any further questions here before we go ahead and I'm going to bring in Dr. Mark before you guys go, because I know that he'd love to talk to you guys real quick before we leave too. Yeah, go ahead, Bud.
First, Jay, I want to concur with Mr. Davis. Powerful, that song. And I had heard it before. I was lucky enough to hear it before. Keep doing what you're doing, guys. You're doing amazing things. And again, there's everybody out there, there's new people every day that come into what we call this parental equality movement. I guess if you want to call it that, there's different names for it. Mm-hmm. But even if you reach one person, there's always that one person that can make a huge change in this world. And again, we're all important. We're all as equally important. And so again, I think it's great what you guys are doing. And I know Dr. Mark we thanked him in the pre-show and he was excited too. It's mm-hmm. Wonderful first half of the show. I appreciate you guys again. I know it's pushing 2 a.m. there. Yes. So thanks for coming on and sacrificing.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. And Randy, right before we go, any additional questions you got, brother?
Yeah. I mean, we all know that it's the money that's driving it. So I guess my question to you is, I know the pain you're going through and you're choosing to go through music, which I can't play anything. I'm proud that you can play me. I love music, but I don't know how it works or how you do what you do. It amazes me. But what do you guys see as being the answer that brings this whole debacle to an end?
I don't think there is an answer. Because even if you make parental alienation completely illegal now, well, murder is illegal, but people still murder each other.
There
always still be people that are willing to do this, even if there is a price to pay. But one of the things what could happen now, and it would, unfortunately, I don't think it will happen because it will cost the industry billions of pounds or billions of dollars over there. But one of the things what could happen now, at the moment, court orders are ignored on an industrial scale. You can get a court order and realistically, it's just a piece of paper. People ignore them every day. Now, if judges actually had the guts to punish people who breach these orders again and again, that would significantly reduce the amount of people who are doing this. But unfortunately, I hate to say this, but I don't think it'll ever stop completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. We need that. We need the courts to not only enforce the child support orders, but they got to enforce the other side, which is the visitation side as well. That's part of the issues that we've got going on. Let me see. I'm going to go ahead and bring in Dr. Mark, if I can here. I went ahead and asked him to turn on his camera real quick here. And Dr. Mark, how are you doing tonight?
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Good evening. We've got Dr. Mark Roseman here, and I'm sure that Dr. Mark, I know he already told you earlier, I'm sure that he wanted to give you guys a good praise on that song. Amazing stuff.
Thank you. These gentlemen across the pond have really been examples for the message in format that I think is dramatic, it's dynamic, and it's entertaining, but it's very specific and focused. And I believe that we really need to, and I'm not from the industry, but I would suggest that there really needs to be some means of, and in fact, I was so pleased. I think Steve and Andrew were guests of mine a week or so ago, and we discussed the possibility, or I planted the idea that there should be a play like Hamilton addressing parental. And I think that this song, the Dear Sophie, which brings tears each time I see it, I think is a catalyst for framing such a program. But I think if we can get something, to play at the the Prince Albert Theater and then bring it, to New York City, Broadway. Now we have the media's attention.
Yes.
Yep.
I agree 100%. Thank you guys so much for coming on. I know it's 2
Thank you for having us.
We'll let you guys go. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch. Absolutely, guys. Is there a website where they can come and see all of your songs and the things that you're producing out there, Andrew?
If you go on any of the main platforms, Apple Music, Tidal, Spotify, whatever people may use, go on any of those platforms and just search for Britizen Kane, Britizen Kane. Search for anything on there. Dear Sophie's on there, and I've got an album out as well at the moment. But yeah, and then www.dear-sophie.com. That's the main website that we need everyone to go to.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We greatly appreciate it.
For having us, we appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
All right, here. So I'm going to go ahead and let these guys go because it is the wee hours of the morning out there, and we do appreciate them for coming on, obviously. We've got Dr. Mark Roseman. And Mark, I wanted to get to something here real quick while I've got you on. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again real quick on this one because I think it's very important. And I'll actually have you talk about this while I've got it up because I won't be able to talk. I've got an echo that'll happen. But this is out there on the website on ncbi.com that says parental alienation is child psychological abuse in the DSM-5. You want to go ahead and elaborate on that now because obviously it is in the psychological evaluation books on the DSM-5.
Yes, you know, that has been a struggle since 1985, I believe, when Gartner was the first to dramatically and publicly begin publishing about the this unfortunately this systemic feature of parental alienation. And the DSM-5 is a manual of diagnoses that is used by the clinical industry, therapeutic industries, psychological and psychiatric to identify, behaviors and to describe these behaviors, and not necessarily to identify complete treatment modules for them. But parental alienation syndrome, either one has faced an uphill battle in being admitted into the DSM. But if you look at what PAS is, it's what is pointed out, as you've said, it's psychological abuse. It's child psychological abuse, which has been fostered by what others have couched as conditions that are found in adults who are helping perpetrate and perpetuate this abuse on the children by characterizing these parents as being narcissistic or having borderline personalities. I think the value that Dr. Childress, Craig Childress had pointed out is that, look, if what he calls Gardnerians, which I really, I don't like the ways he chastises all these pioneers and contemporaries, right, who identifying a parental alienation and means of treatment and as well as diagnosing, but he does. But he also, I think, rightfully says, look, the DSM does account for emotional child abuse, and so therefore that needs to be easily identified. I think that if you can identify what a child is experiencing, and realize what significant influence is upon that child, namely, one parent in particular, much of the time, then clearly there's got to be interventions that can be, provided.
Okay, so let me ask you this. The important thing, I think, that a lot of people out here who may be experiencing parental alienation, regardless of whether you want to call it a syndrome or whether you don't want to call it a syndrome,
Right.
Whether you want to call it narcissistic personality disorder, whether you want to, whatever you want to call it, what we know it to be now in the DSM-5 is listed as child psychological abuse.
Yes.
So whether we want to call it that in the family court or not, that's completely up to the courts on how they want to identify it.
Right.
But what are some of the identifying factors? So let's say if you've got a situation where, let's take, for example, a father is being alienated from his child. What are some of the things, or the identifying factors, some of the things that mom could be saying that would alienate this child? Or what are some of the things that she could do or say?
Well, actually, there are two things that I would say are reinforced by a parent, if not led by a parent, and that is the child's own estrangement. There's a difference between estrangement and parental alienation, but they lead to the same thing, and that is that a parent is targeted. The common thinking that a child has: we don't need him, we don't love him, we don't want him. Okay, and that child can have within themselves a blame, a reason, a justification that comes from within the child, which may be right or wrong. But when you have the other parent reinforcing the child's views, then that abuse then ensues. Particularly when the targeted parent, that alienated parent, has a very good relationship with the child before the onset of the separation.
Okay.
That's what traditional psychologists, therapists do not investigate. What is the child saying? How is the child behaving towards that targeted parent? And they say, "Oh, Houston, we have a problem," and the problem has begun now. Clearly, something has upset the child. You know what? What's upset the child is a myriad of things. But we're not looking at domestic abuse in all these cases. We're not looking at physical punishment that change the child's perception. Is the fact that the other parent hates the schmuck, right? The other parent doesn't want the other parent involved in the child's life. And I oftentimes, and pardon me, because I know you have questions and I appreciate it very much. In fact, I spoke at the state legislature a week ago here in Connecticut, where I am now. And I say, look, has anyone dated before? Does anyone remember, when they had a relationship as a teenager or as a young adult, or even as an older adult, and you broke up? Do you remember what that was like? It sucked, didn't it? This was terrible. You felt a victim, or in some cases you may have felt relief. But you know what? If you were angry, what do you want to do? You want to punish. And if you have a child, don't you think the most significant thing you can do to a parent is to remove their child? Worst thing. It's the worst thing. And therefore, you have the, this behavior. Now, I can I ramble a moment, Jay?
Sure, yeah. Go ahead.
But, okay, thank you. I do want to say that we're looking at about 30% of families that split. These are called the highly conflicted or high conflict couples or high conflict families. That also is debatable. But 70% are able to go through and adapt to the separation, the divorce, and the co-parenting. They're able to make that adjustment. 30% are not. But I would not say that it is mental health issues that are creating this. It's simply the inability, there are mental health issues, and pardon me, but it's not exclusively a mental health issue. It's that very immature response and the desire to get even with the other party.
Mhm.
And that is a normal, if you look at international relations, this is what we do internationally, sadly. We don't step back and pause and say, oh, wow, well, you know what? Let's look at other ways that, you know, we can resolve this problem, diffuse the tension, and make life better for both of us. You know, come to understand what each side has need for, and we can accommodate.
Right. And I'm going to interrupt you for a second,
Yeah,
because
please.
I know Bud harps on me on this one all the time. When you're talking about retaliation factors, and you're talking about, okay, well, when you hurt, and we talk about this all the time, when we have so many people in this movement community that when they hurt, they lash out and they hurt other people. And that, I know Bud wants to elaborate. I can see him chomping at the bit over there.
Well, first off, yeah, Jay and I have had many discussions about this on the you know, behind the scenes, and it is a very natural reaction to when you're hurt to try and one up someone. It's as the good doctor points out, perhaps a very immature response. And if you can again, it's picking and choosing your battles, but if you can actually sit back and breathe a little bit, and again, look at, is this overall going to help me and or my cause, or hurt me and my cause, and really step back and look at it, and who's this going to affect in a positive way, and is this going to hurt and regress us? That's the harder thing to do, and it's very hard sometimes not to retaliate. And I hear people up that come to me privately and literally say, how can you not? How can you not in some cases? And it's the hardest thing to do, to hold some of that in. And again, the one thing I've learned, I don't have all the answers. And I think that's what we learn as a group, is we can kind of come together and kind of pick apart what works for us, or what
Yes.
feels right. But I always say, too, go with what feels right. And again, we're all different. But for me, I've found that holding back and not retaliating out of anger or pain, waiting and doing it more logically and rationally, it can only benefit you, Doctor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we also discussed this fact is, when you're dealing with an issue, or you're dealing with a problem person such as a narcissist's natural reaction is they want to harp on you, and they want to get to you, and what they're looking for is a response. And so a lot of the time Bud tells me, hey, stop, take a look, think, listen, understand what they want you to respond as, and react the opposite. And I think that's great advice.
It's wonderful advice, because what's driving that person? Control, manipulation, and the narcissist, you know, they see themselves as pure, but they also know that in order to have others believe that they are pure, that's why they have to manipulate the child. But it's why they have to feed the child, you know, with lies and distortions, and also because they feed the child is going to want to mimic what the parent is telling them, and what they need. If, for instance, they're going to a forensic evaluation, then the child is filled with lines that the other parent has prepped them to say. And there's a wonderful, I've over the last 20 years, I've gotten to know many wonderful people in this field. And Dr. Abe Warenkin, who was a clinical psychologist in Montreal, Canada, that when he treats a child who they know has been alienated, he sits with the child, and it could be a preteen or it could be a teenager, and you know, he leans on the table like this, and he says, you know what? I'm so happy that we're here today. He says, you know what? I know there's a lot of tension you probably feel, and I get it. Believe me. And he says, now, you know what? Let's start off by you telling me what your dad or your mom told you to say. Let me write that down now.
That's good.
Okay. Isn't that incredible?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think the child does?
Tells them.
Tells them. And you know what? It's uplifting for the child. They got all that bull crap off their shoulders, which is a professional term, by the way. But that comes off of their shoulders, and now they can be real. Now they can be real, and I think that is so critical. The problem, there are many problems, but as you've heard, it's the court. By the way, I want to interrupt myself for a moment, and I want to say, Randy, I saw your interview with Larry DeMarco the other evening, and I want to tell you that I found you to be so refreshing. You're such a wonderful interviewer. These gentlemen are as well. But I wanted to compliment you on the extent of that really fine interview with Larry, who, is a black sheep in the community in Philly, in Upper Dartmouth or in Delaware County, and is running for judge. And I certainly, I'm so happy that you were able to make the time to interview him and allow him to share, what his feeling, because we need judges like this. We need judges like this. So, pardon me, that was what I wanted to share.
And I'm sure that Randy probably wants to get in and ask you a question as well, so I'll let him take the floor.
Yeah,
Please.
and Dr. Roseman, thank you, and thank you for the compliment. We have a saying, and it's that hurt people hurt people. And a lot of what I've seen is this.
Yes.
There'll be parents, and yeah, they don't get along or whatever, but and I'll talk about real case scenarios. There's a 16-year-old boy, and they have these supervised visitation. He'd always been with his mother all the way to age 12. Well, for 52 months now, he's had 3 unsupervised visits with his mother, who always had him. It's a complete bogus thing. And the courts made them go to therapists and have supervised visits there. And every visit, everything went very well. As a matter of fact, the therapist recommended that the child be reunited with the mother. Now, this was court-ordered therapy. The judge still didn't do it. But here's what was going on. And the young man right now, as a matter of fact, just got suspended from school. Okay. The mother hadn't talked to him in months. He's cut off from his other 3 siblings. But this is what would happen in the court reports. During the visits, everything went beautiful with the therapist, and the therapist reported that. But what would happen is when the foster mother would leave, then the social workers involved in the GAL would rewrite history, and they would say that after the visit with the mother, the boy acts out. Now, maybe he acted out because he was actually asked, why would you act out after the visit with the mother? And he said, and he told us in a camera interview we haven't made public, but he said, it's because I want to be back home with my mother.
Right.
But they used that against him. So what are some of the things I get when a child has been alienated and separated like this? What do you see? Because you gave some of the indicators of what the parent goes through. But what are the acting out symptoms of a child who's been alienated? Even if it's only a little while, what are the symptoms and what happens in a child's life?
That's it depends on the child's age and their stage of development and their understanding and how long the separation has been, and also the feeling. They speak about the Munchausen effect, where if a child has been abused and yet maintains their home with that abuser, they become very much allied with their abuser, and that's because at least they're having sustenance in their home. It might not be mentally and emotionally healthy, but they take on the direction of that parent. But when children act out, there are many different ways. You can have children who behave are perfect in their homes. and are perfect in the school setting, let's say, and their relationships with friends are also non-confrontational. They may also be, pardon me, have very few friends, but you compare that with the children, and I believe it's over 82% of the kids that commit mass murders are products of single-parent households, and so you can contrast the expression, the behavioral expression from kids, very that dramatically. But the important question then is well, let me give you some statistics. Because I don't think our society connects the dots. 40% of public school children live in single parent households. Okay, that's the baseline. Now, 40% of public school children are treated and diagnosed for ADD, ADHD, and behavior modification. They're on, Ritalin, they're on Adderall, they're on other medications. And they, by the way, it's not yet determined the precise prescription that is appropriate for a child. In fact, it's also found that these medications will have another adverse reaction on a teenager or a child that might be 9, 10 years old and have a very high level of hormones. And it will exacerbate their sexual stimulation. So kids would act out in crazy ways because of the affect of the medication, which is poorly, it's given too frequently, too easily, and dosage is not well managed, sadly. There's no uniform standard based on a lot of research at this point. But then consider that 30% of kids don't graduate high school, right? And 40% of kids are taking, recreational drugs. They're drinking alcohol. Teenagers, you got teenage moms. You've got low self-esteem. You got suicide, and you've got bullying. So there are a lot of behaviors that are really endemic in this population. Some of the behaviors are not so aberrant. You got these kids, as I mentioned first, that they appear very normal, and they're respectful, and they behave themselves. But it's also because they're freaking pissed off. And if you see that child's academic averages, has suddenly shot up, they're putting themselves in their academics only because they have no other outlet to express themselves, and they need to have an appropriate evaluation and anybody that's gone through trauma, right? And we're looking at children who are going through trauma when parents split, they're being indoctrinated by one parent against the other. This is traumatic. But now it's being fed by an adult parent who themselves had childhood trauma, who themselves have mental health issues that have not been treated. And it's only their behavior, the adult's behavior, that is giving evidence of their own childhood trauma and their own mental health issues. And that needs to be understood. But, when courts, if you're fortunate enough to have a court to recognize this and to issue court orders for that, which, by the way, is also costly unless they can have therapy, which is covered by their insurance. This takes time. And what's necessary? Time with the child is necessary. When you have an alienated parent, traditional therapy says, well, we have to listen to the child, we have to work on their fears, and we'll try to condition them or precondition them or predispose them to wanting to have time with the other parent. You know what that means? It means nothing. It does not help. What to alienate it. It's not traditional therapeutic interventions. They're going to help the child. What they need is immediate immersion. They need to have the reinforcement that time with the other parent is critical. And the look what your question did, Randy. It gave me. So I apologize.
Yeah. I think what you're saying, though, is obviously, number one, if you see a spike or a decline in the child's grades,
yes,
that could be a major indicator.
Absolutely.
If you see a spike in drug usage, if you see a spike in the child's behaviors, are they lashing out? Are they saying things that they probably normally wouldn't have said?
Yes.
Are they sleeping more than they shouldn't, sleep as opposed? Maybe that's a good sign that you're not helping in this fact. Maybe it's a good sign that you need to have both parents be a part of that child's life so that they can really pay attention to the child's life and what the child's going through.
Yes.
It's not about, mom's got to work 10 hours a day. Okay, well, what is the child doing during that 10 hours a day? Because they're in school, 8 hours? So what are they doing those other 2 hours? Are they out with their friends smoking dope? Are you paying attention to what's happening during those other 2 hours? Are they coming home sleeping? Are they making friends that happen to be putting themselves in bad situations? It's a real indicator for me that we have a society that's set up that doesn't really care about kids. They care about their 9-to-5 job. That way they can go ahead and come home and they can sit on their fat behinds and eat bonbons all day. That's what I'm seeing. And you need to pay attention to your kids. Gone are the days when we used to have, I know Randy can tell you this, Bud can tell you this, gone are the days where you had a family dinner and you sat down and you talked about your day.
Right.
And we need a society that has that again. We really do.
We do. For years I've argued against blue laws. Is that what they call it in your respective states?
They do in North Carolina.
Okay, so it's when stores are open on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, I think I was in high school when in the 19th century, and they invented the blue laws, and they said that this is going to be good for business. Yeah, sure it is. It's bad for families. It's destructive. And I thought about the tension, and of course over the years, as you see, you've got all these people working retail. You've got the compulsion to go out and shop. You're not doing family things, and I don't think it's as much an accommodation for the families to shop and leave the house as much as it is, an opportunity for business and industry to make a buck. But your question about how indicative, how do children give evidence that there are serious problems in the home? The research was done, and I don't know if it was Sanford Braver or not, because he did a lot of research in looking at the disposition of families and the effect of divorce on families. He was out of Arizona State University. He retired a year ago. But I believe it was his research that showed that bad behavior by kids is found to indicate a parent's divorce as early as 5 years before the split.
Oh, wow.
When that child begins misbehaving, bingo, there's a problem in that house. And I'm sure our own grandparents could have said that, right? Didn't have to be done by research, but it is supported by research. And that's why the role of the schools, where kids spend most of their time, must have the opportunities to explore causes and sources of tension that children have. And the goal is not to medicate kids so that they're better behaved in school and the teachers can better, achieve whatever their lesson plans may be. That's a fallacy, and it's destructive, and sadly, it's very common in boards.
Right, right. And I would say this is where it comes full circle in your divorce. What what he's basically saying here, what Dr. Mark is basically saying here is up to 5 years before these children could have behavioral issues before the divorce takes place. So that's a very, very good indicator for you to wrap it full circle when we come back into FERPA, because that could show up on the child's educational reports.
Well, FERPA also is really it's extremely helpful in ways not only with respect to the the privacy of any school social worker or guidance counselor or psychologist, but it also allows parents to obtain their children's reports. But with respect to the kids, there really needs to be a means of identifying how the child is functioning socially and emotionally in school. I had a thought, and pardon me, it just ran away, but I think that we must find a better way of being able to examine and identify what children are experiencing, and not wait for the parent-teacher meetings where you may say, "Hey, how's Johnny doing?" or "How's Sally? How's she behaving in class?" It's not enough. It's not enough. And I don't mean to micromanage every child, but clearly, and it's generally at a time when kids begin to show a difference in behavior patterns, a difference in their academic achievement, and their doing the homework, right, and maybe begin bullying another child. These are symptoms. These are symptoms that must be understood. I write in my book, Preserving Family Ties, that it's context. We need to understand context. When people, ourselves, our children, anybody acts or makes choices in certain ways on a daily basis or a periodic basis, it's based on the thoughts, the presence of mind, and the goals that we may be conscious of or subconsciously driven to make. And with respect to kids, they don't always easily disclose. They generally say, "I don't know," and you know what? They may not know, but subjectively or subliminally, rather, they have feelings that drive them to certain ways. They don't understand restraint. And think that family doctors must be trained, and also general practitioners and family practitioners must be trained, or their staff must be trained in asking complete questions. And in fact, I write about that also, because if we do full intakes with parents and with children every time we go into a doctor's office, that can help identify changes in that family dynamic. And that can help bring about perhaps referrals, suggestions, open-ended questions that can help, by the interventions. We married people, or we came together for reasons. And oftentimes it's those very reasons that are the cause of our breakup, believe it or not. That's what our research does show. But if we can understand why we're attracted to someone, why we came into someone's life, why we allowed someone to come into our life, I believe that we can better understand not only ourselves, but the decisions that we really want to make, and we can adapt to each. We don't have to split, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Bud.
Thank you, Bud. Pardon me.
Thank you, Doctor. First of all, I want to touch on what you just said. And I think that is such an important aspect of understanding how to deal with other people and assist other people, especially your own children. You have to understand yourself and your own hangups, issues, psychological background. And I don't, as you put it too, Doctor, you've been very clinical. I don't mean as a victim. I mean very, very clinically. What is it that about me, and it's not about blame, as you know, Doctor, what is it about me that's drawing? It's not all, you see all the people all the time. Oh, what is it? I attract all these people. These are what is it about you? You have to look within and say, what am I doing? Again, not that it's all about blame. What is it about me that I'm drawing these people, not the other way around and things like that? What is it that I can fix within myself? Because you learn you can't fix other people.
Right. Yes. Very good point. Very good point.
So, in saying that too, and I wanted to touch on another point, because some people out there might be saying, well, if your child is excelling in school and you see that, well, why would that be a problem? Well, the problem is obviously, Doctor, I think you'll concur, is children and people do in life, they look for things they can control. So if you see something start to spike in an upward direction, sometimes it's that they don't have any control. This leads to issues of obsessive compulsive disorder, other psychological issues of perfection, where you're directing and you're so perverted, I guess, in terms of the way to put it, in terms of your own perfection and distracting you from actual issues.
Yes.
So if you could use some, I think in layman's terms, to say where people would be confused on that, why would that be bad? Well, you got to look at why that child, they're trying to control something because everything else could be out of control, Doctor.
Yes. Yeah. I completely agree with you. I think, Jay and Randy, may also. And what does a child need? They need control, right? They need self-control, and they also need consistency. But that can be a double-edged sword. Again, if a standard therapist is going to say, well, we need to allow the child to remain in what's giving them safety and less conflict. That means removing the other parent completely is going to eliminate the conflict. Well, that's crap. It's only going to cause more violence, more low self-esteem, and more attraction to recreational drugs. I mean, these are statistics, by the way.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing point, because you're talking about, okay, why are these grades skyrocketing? I want you to think about this for a minute. Some of the most intelligent people on the face of the earth, and you wouldn't believe this, but if you really look at it, John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, very intelligent people. Would you like your kid to grow up to be like them? Probably not, because they're serial killers. And there's a reason behind this, folks. It's because they become withdrawn. Your child has become withdrawn. We need to make sure that we're pulling these things back to where a child is not withdrawn from society. They need to be involved with society. They don't need to be introverts. They need to be extroverts.
Right.
And the way to do that is to include them in things and to understand what they're going through and talk to them about their issues and their problems. You can't do that when you allow your child to be an introvert just because you're like, yeah, I want those grades up. Hey, that's great. But are you having good communication with your child?
I think, that's, as I think this conversation has reflected, is that there are many components to mental health, to being positive, to feeling part of a family, to moving forward in life, to accepting responsibilities, to being productive, to enjoying and valuing life. And if we are impeding this on children by allowing a parent to alienate a child against the other parent, that is abnormal. It is abnormal behavior, although it may be a natural consequence because of the breakup. But it's an inability to cope with that breakup in a way that is, what I've written about other places about disentanglement, how a family can normally disentangle, come apart, but with phases. If that doesn't happen, that it's like hitting a solid wall at 60 miles an hour. And by the way, you do damage at 15 miles an hour or less. So we have to constantly be vigilant, as professionals in the school system, as as health professionals, the interactions with family, and as parents, we need to be vigilant. What is happening with our children? And again, the social media is a distractor. It's also detaching, and it's delimiting, and it is perverting our relationships. And parents catch hell if they threaten discipline. Kids call 911. What kind of a society are we living in when a kid can do this?
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this, because we know parental alienation. I've got some microphone issues here. I don't know what's going on with that. I'll try and fix that real quick. Okay, there we go. Because of what's going on and the detachment and everything with parental alienation, do you feel as if that the courts are going to more widely accept this in the future, that parental alienation is a real thing?
When Stephen Best answered that question, he answered it best. And he says, who knows, right? Essentially. Mm-hmm. And the only way to make changes realistically in this country is on a state-by-state basis right now. Every state, right, has their own set of laws. On the other hand, I believe that, when I watched President Trump speak last week at the State of the Union, and he said that we need to have, the federal government has, and I haven't had a chance yet to look, I've been wanting to do it, but that one-step criminal program. So that guy's not going to be locked up for over 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. Because of freaking possession.
Right.
This guy lost so much of his life, much of his formative years. But Trump said, this is really, it's a national issue. Well, guess what? We will have more changes when Trump will open his mouth and say, you know what? Family values are critical. We are undermining families, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Why? Because he's the only son of a bee that can say that,
Mm-hmm.
President.
Yeah.
And God darn it, he's got to do that.
Right.
Got to do that, and he's got to hold the states accountable. And I'm here in very cold Connecticut. I am a New Englander, but 10 years I've been living in Florida. But I will tell you that I was invited to speak at the State House a week ago, and I had been an activist in Connecticut 20 years ago, and I served on several governors' committees. And what have they done since then? Zero, nothing. And in fact, I found out from the testimonies that were given at this public forum, which every state needs to adopt, a public forum on parental alienation and court reform. And I made that a project for myself and my dear friend Danica Fields in Florida, and also Wendy Perry, to create a toolkit for activists and the legislatures to create a forum on parental alienation and court reform. I have learned, sadly, that Connecticut is so corrupt. I cannot believe it, although I should, looking back at the cases I know and the experience I had 20 some odd years ago. But in that legislative office building, in that room, and by the way, the public hearing was recorded. In fact, William Burnett, Linda Gottlieb, and Dr. Stephen Miller, the Harvard psychiatrist, were on that earlier panel in the morning. I follow that, but I would encourage everyone to listen to see. But in that forum that afternoon, up until 8 o'clock at night, individual moms and dads spoke about the challenges with their own cases, and they mentioned names. They named judges, they named guardian ad litems, and they named several therapists. And I could not believe in this large room, I'd say by 8 o'clock, there were about 100 people there, but earlier in the day, it was about 200. You heard gasps. People recognized these names, and they were astounded. It's like you too. Oh my God. Oh. You know, it's endemic in Connecticut. The corruption in Connecticut is frightening. And this is and this is the one of the states of liberty, one of the original 13 colonies. And by the way, the first president of the United States from Connecticut, that was Samuel Huntington. He had authority as president before George Washington. It's interesting, but I can't believe this state has usurped all these powers. It's a money grubbing industry. It's polluting. It's killing our families, and all of our states have degrees of this very degenerative aspect.
Right. I agree. Well, we're getting down to the last part here. Let me go ahead and go around. If there are any other questions here, let's go ahead and get to them. But I want to definitely thank you, Dr. Mark, for coming on. I appreciate it.
I thank you all for this subject and giving me an opportunity to share with you.
Absolutely. Any other questions we got, guys?
Yeah.
If I could, go ahead, Randy. I yield to you.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Roseman, Jay rushed off the two guests before they could say rev it up. I'm going to need you to say rev it up. So I got
rev it up, man. Rev it up.
All right. The other thing is I'm going to need you for like a 2-hour show.
I would be delighted. You
want to do it this Sunday at 8 o'clock?
I can.
Okay, 8 o'clock this Sunday, then, because I've got a ton of questions for you. And before Jay blows me out of here, because there's been so many musical guests, I just wanted to do this for everybody.
And I remember I was very musical in high school. We used to do this.
Awesome.
The only thing I can play.
I won't do that on the show.
Yep,
Dr.
but
Mark, I'm really happy to hear you're going to be going on the Watchmen. I'll give Randy Davis.
I'm thrilled. Thank you for making this happen. And we're all in this together. And I applaud you, Jay. I'm so happy, to have met you last May in Washington.
Yeah. Amazing. And now you guys know why we talk for like 2 or 3 hours just sitting there.
Yeah, well, I think it's really important that everybody tune into the Watchmen Sunday night. I believe 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, if I'm not mistaken. Thousands and thousands of views. I know it's helped a lot of people, and I think focusing on this for another 2 hours is paramount. I think there's a lot more information. Again, I'm happy to hear it'll be going on. As I see, we're getting close to our time ending. There's so much more to discuss here. So
yes,
brilliant, Mr. Davis, and pinning Dr. Mark on the air was a stroke of genius.
You got to get it when you can. You got to make hay while the sun shines.
Right. Well, Dr. Mark, again, one last time, we thank you so much, and so do the people. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you and meeting you in the future. Look forward to seeing you Sunday night on the Watchmen with Randy Davis.
Thank you, Bud. Thank you all. Thank you all for what you do.
All right, we'll let Dr. Mark go here. All right, let me make sure we got all that taken care of. All right, and so we are really excited the fact that we had 2 amazing guests, well, 3, but definitely amazing guests on tonight. Definitely Stephen Best and Andrew Preston. Also had Dr. Mark on. Just amazing information on parental alienation. We enjoyed our time with them. Obviously, I think some staggering statistics, some staggering information for you when we're talking about children, that you really need to pay attention to them and what they're going through. And if you don't pay attention to your child right now, it could be 5 years from now that you have a divorce, and that you could have known 5 years earlier, 5 years previous. If you had just paid attention to your child and what was going on in their lives, maybe you would know.
Yeah. And Jay,
that's interesting.
Yeah, you touched on this, Jay, too. If I could quickly, we mentioned it seems like on a lot of shows, it seems to come up, Randy, as well, is the importance of that. Again, we talk at, the dinner table discussions, Jay, we've mentioned for over 2 years now, and asking the questions. Don't be the parent, whatever. Ask the tough questions that are uncomfortable for your kids. Ask the one, dig in. Don't be one, after say, oh man, I wish I had seen it. Well, sometimes, if you ignore certain things, maybe it's because, certain people don't want to see it. Well, sometimes you've got to see it. You got to open it up. And also, Jay, in terms of parental alienation, I say too, it all starts at home, and again, sometimes we find ourselves defending. We find ourselves wanting to defend ourselves, especially when they're blatant lies. And I would encourage people, again, to start at home. Again, dispelling things that are false is fine, but don't go further than that with your children. Be the one that sets the example in terms of parental alienation and going against that grain, going against what sometimes can be easier, and that's attacking the other one when you're attacked. And sometimes, again, just look at your child. And if you're the one doing the alienating out there, look at your child. And think about the relationships that you have with your parents. If they're bad, there's no way you don't wish they were good. So you want that for your child. And if they're good, you want that for your child as well. Right. Don't be selfish. Look at the child. Again, you're not always going to be around as a parent. We're all going to go 6 feet under at some point. Don't leave your child with a legacy of dysfunction. Leave your child with a legacy of breaking that cycle of dysfunction and changing those cycles and being the example that your child needs and being that hero. And again, I want to thank the guests we've had on, Britizen Kane, awesome. Dr. Mark, awesome. And he mentioned Wendy Perry. So we give a shout out to Wendy Perry, a friend of the show we've had on before, doing great work out there. And before we get going too, again, I want to thank you, Jay Money Moss, for being a cohort and a friend, and rip up Randy Davis. And although Neil, he's so hot, he's got the ice and snow melt, Mr. Neil shouting. He didn't have it all melting tonight because he missed the show, I see, due to snow and ice. Son of a beast.
Oh, yeah. And a few other letters, but we'll get to those later.
We love you, Neil, and he'll be back next week.
Yeah, amazing stuff. So let's get into our shout outs before we go. We'll go right back to Bud Vino for your shout outs, brother.
Awesome. First of all, there's a gentleman in Maine, Jeremy Lemire, I want to say. He hadn't seen his kids. He saw them for the first time today in a long time, his son and his daughter. So Jeremy out there, wonderful, loving father. I met him through a personal conversation many months ago, felt his pain, saw him rise. He was one of the ones I talk about. And I'm going to say this, he'll smile. Jeremy, look in the mirror. Remember who you are, Jeremy. Remember your name, Jeremy. You're an awesome dude, Jeremy. And he proved it today to himself and the kiddos and to the world that love trumps hate. We love you, Jeremy. Keep fighting. To all the moms and dads out there who are struggling, who are down on one knee. Jay, get up. It's not over till you say it's over. And I ain't heard no bells. To my wife, Allison, I love you, baby. My biggest, bestest, Carter, I love you, pal. And to my littlest, bestest, I love you, Mason. We'll see you later tonight. Again, everybody, chins up. Chins up. And one last thing, Jay, the people hurting out there that may be on the edge, suicidal, having thoughts of it, reach out, suicide hotline, reach out to a friend, talk. Do not keep this stuff in. There is a better tomorrow, folks.
All right. So Bud got the goblin early tonight. You got the
I used to get the whip. Thank you.
You used to get the whip. All right. So Randy Davis for shout outs, brother.
Yeah, I'm gonna give my shout out to the parents that are still out there suffering. I'm telling you, I love you all. I know what you're going through, and especially to a Sanford, North Carolina pair of grandparents that have got 2 twins that they know are in danger. To Melissa McDonald, who's got a child we know is in harm's way where he's put over there. And to all the others who know your child is in a situation, you have no control over it, believe me, there is help coming on the way. There are changes going to come. Things are going to happen. The shows are becoming more complete. The guests are ramping up. You have doctors, you have lawyers. We're going to have therapists, GALs. You're going to have real parents telling real stories. You're in the right place, folks. If you lost all hope, get it back. Please get your hope back. Nobody here peddling snake oil or doing any of these false things, but I'm telling you, there's real help and support here.
Absolutely, 100%. And he gets the rooster. All right. So, amazing stuff tonight, man. I cannot say enough. Definitely thank you to Andrew, to Stephen, to Dr. Mark, to my buddies here, Mr. Rev It Up, Randy Davis. I got my brother Bud Vino here, Mr. Neil Shelton, who will be on, I'm sure, next week. Had some things going on tonight, but he will be back. Also, to those out there who want to contribute to our broadcast and how we do things with the Watchmen, with Far From Normal, with all the different programs that we have going out there, we do have a PayPal out there, and it is set up specifically for the show. Any other excess funds will go towards what we will be doing very, very soon, which is getting hats, T-shirts, and all of those other things out there so that we can get our publicity out there to you guys. Number one, yeah, just like this bumper sticker that Bud is holding up there. We'll do other bumper stickers as well, and some different logos and things like that for you out there. So when you see those come across, go ahead and purchase those, because anything that we get off of those additional funds will go right back in the next year's service. So that way we don't have to keep coming back to you and asking you each and every single year, hey, can you contribute to our PayPal so we can put on a show next week? Those kind of things. So we're going to put those things out there, and it'll also get us more advertising. The more advertising we have out there, the more people get to hear great people like Britizen Kane every single week. The more people get to hear Dr. Mark or Mark Ludwig or all of the guests that we have on. That's going to get the message out there for you guys. So as we say each and every single week in signing off the show, you are important, you are loved, and you are cared about. God bless, and good night, folks.
Thanks, guys.
Rev it up.
Can you hear the wind that's howling through the concrete trees? Got you praying on your knees. In the face of danger we're all brave, till the gun goes bang, bang, bang. It's a cruel, cruel world, no mercy left, yeah, it's a cruel, cruel world. It'll break your heart and burn you down, down, down. Don't ever doubt that it's a cruel, cruel world. Oh, it's a cruel, cruel world. Smoke will turn your soul to black if you let it in. So close the door, confess your sins. Oh, when I was younger, it was all roses. Now they're dead and gone away. It's a cruel, cruel world, no mercy left, yeah, it's a cruel, cruel world. It'll break your heart and burn you down, down, down. Don't ever doubt that it's a cruel, cruel world. Oh, it's a cruel, cruel world. Oh, can you help me? Oh, can you help me out? Don't know who I can trust right now. Oh, can you help me? Oh, can you help me out? Oh, it's a cruel, cruel world. It's a cruel